in the Word of Yahuah. Nowadays, many people are living a life without Yahuah and His Word. As believers in Yahuah, our Elohah, this is unacceptable for us and for our families, but most especially for our children. Children are the greatest in the heavenly kingdom of Yahuah. Yahushua says that the kingdom of heaven belongs to those who are like them. Let's go to Luke 18:16. But Yahushua called them unto him and said, Suffer the little children to come unto me, and forbid them not, for such is the kingdom of Yahuwah. Hello and welcome back. In this video, I want to discuss some of the things we should and should not do when raising our children to follow the Word of Yahuah rather than the world and its concepts. Now, take no offense. I know nobody likes to feel criticized and nobody wants to be told how to raise their kids, and that's fine if you're going to clothe them, house them, feed them, and employ them for the rest of their lives. But it's high time we accept that some things were done wrongly by our parents, and that in order to stop our children from taking on the worst aspects of ourselves, we need to make changes with ourselves first, beginning with some unlearning and learning. Now, for some of the unlearning strategies, please go to the unlearning playlist linked in the description and at the end of the video. Let's do some more learning in this video, though. Let's start at responsibility. Yes, responsibility. What is responsibility? Let's look it up. Responsibility is the quality or state of being accountable for one's actions, including moral, legal, or mental accountability, and it can also refer to something for which one is responsible, such as a task or duty. It's alright, okay. Specifically, responsibility refers to the quality or state of being accountable for one's actions. It encompasses various aspects, including, but not limited to, moral accountability, being answerable for ethical decisions and actions, legal accountability, obligations under the law that require individuals to act a certain way, mental accountability, the cognitive aspect of recognizing and owning one's actions. Okay, not a bad definition this time. It's pretty legit. Okay, that's how I can tell this is a real thing. Alright, are you teaching your children responsibility and accountability? Do you hold your children accountable for their actions? And in what way? Why is responsibility even important? Let's start there. A person's ability to be responsible for themselves and even for others speaks volumes about their personality and spiritual strength and character. Teaching a child to be responsible can set them on the right path for life. And letting them be accountable and deal with the consequences of their actions, instead of trying to shield them all the time, will show them just how serious and costly their actions can be. Sometimes extra punishment isn't even necessary. The consequences are just natural. How can we teach a child responsibility? This brings us to our next point. 2. Do as I say and not as I do. Now, I'm sure most people were raised under this standard. I know I was, which is unfortunate and unfair. How can a parent expect the child to be something they aren't? How can the child be what the parent isn't? You can't teach me responsibility if you're not responsible. Example. I know someone who a few years ago was expecting their first child, and when I asked what they wanted for their child, like, what they wanted them to be like, or, what they thought they might want the child to grow up to, I guess kind of be like, they said they wanted for the child to be clever with words and numbers and to love reading. This person does not love reading, so I said to them, you'll have to start reading and loving those things. Otherwise, the child won't see value in those things because nobody around them is doing them. Or if the most important people in their life aren't doing it, why would they do it? Why would they think it's important? They don't care if you're not doing it. If they live in a house with you and they never see you do something, is that what they're going to think is important? No. Sadly, another example, I wasn't thinking of saying this, but this is so sad because I've seen multiple kids have said this to me, where they see things like smoking in the house, and then they're like, oh, this is good. And I'm just like, no, this is actually dangerous for your health, XYZ. And they're like, but such and such does it. And they name the person in their house who does it, And they're just like, I can't wait to be able to do this. And I'm like, no, please don't do this. But you see, even something that we as grown-ups, or something that we were taught as young people was bad, now to them is so common, and they see it in their household so often that to them this is good. And they can't wait to grow up and do it, even though we know it's dangerous. Anyway, back to the topic. Do you say this to your children? Do you say, do what I say, not what I do? This is a very dangerous attitude to have. If you're telling your children to do something that you don't even do yourself, or that they never see you doing, what kind of example are you setting? What kind of example are they observing? A hypocritical one. One that they will follow, eventually becoming hypocrites themselves. This ought not be so. This is partly why there's such an emphasis on getting good grades, even if the child doesn't understand a lick of the work. The expectation and the work needed on the parents' part in order for the child to get there aren't adding up. Math ain't mathin'. If you lie or encourage a child to lie on your behalf, they will not value the truth. If you take shortcuts in order to get the result that you want without having to actually do or learn, the child will follow that example. If you tell your child to clean up after themselves, but if you do not clean up after yourselves, they will not view the command as valuable or even valid, because it's not even being followed by the very person giving the command. This is the thing when I was little. My mom would insist on my siblings and I cleaning up after ourselves, but yet she would call me all the way downstairs just so that I could put something in the sink or the garbage for her. Like the living room, it was living room, dining room, kitchen. So they're right near each other. You could have easily done it yourself. Bruh, that doesn't even make sense. In the time it took me to stop what I was doing, come downstairs, she could have done it already. But you see, it's one of those things of sort of taking advantage, but I want you to do it. I value the house being clean when you're doing it, not me. That's wrong, though. Model the behaviors you wish for your children to exhibit and acknowledge their good behaviors. I mean, eventually they'll learn to practice these same behaviors whether they receive human recognition or not. Because they'll understand that, one, Yahuah sees them and will remember their goodness. And also, that it'll just be a habit, a normal part of the lifestyle that they'll live. Let's move on, though. This was a lot. 3. Discipline. Unfortunately, true discipline is sorely lacking amongst both children and adults these days. Discipline is described as follows. Discipline means control gained by enforcing obedience or order, including orderly conduct in accordance with rules. It can also mean training or self-control, keeping working at something difficult or following a regular practice. That's what I like, regular practice. That's what this definition, it's good because it includes, it's not just something that you do when you feel like it. It has to be consistent. It's a parent's duty to teach and prepare their children to obey Yahuah and His authority, and to teach them that there are consequences for disobedience, natural and otherwise. Without proper discipline, we're setting our children up for failure. So many times I've seen the lack of discipline come back to bite the kid in the butt. Short story, for example. The middle schoolers at a particular school were allowed to get away with everything. Literally, they could lie, not do anything. They could not do homework and projects and just lie about it and have their parent going in on the teacher. And the administration would not back the teacher. They would create issues where there was no issue. It was only fairness and discipline being enforced. They thought they were on top of the pyramid because they were above reproach. But when they got into high school and realized the standards were higher than they were used to, they were drowning. When some of them came back to visit and the staff asked if they felt prepared for the next school and the next level, they said no! They weren't used to meeting deadlines, turning things in. Nobody cared about their excuses. They couldn't believe there were consequences for being late. Of course there are. Basic things that they couldn't learn, or that they could have learned to do in middle school, they never learned because of the lack of discipline. And this is also where humility comes in. At such a young age, they had no humility, which is very sad. Anyway, They don't expect to be held accountable for their wrongdoings because they're not accustomed to being corrected. A lack of discipline also leads to unbearable pride, and we all know that Yahuwah opposes the proud. Yahuwah's words, promises, and laws should constantly be a topic of discussion in all of our homes. Otherwise, how can we expect children to even know what the standard is? Bible even says to teach them. Look, Deuteronomy, and these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. How else can we expect to find peace within our homes? Also, notice how it says for each thing, like when you're walking, when you're sitting, like just when you're doing random things, you can talk about these things with your kids. You don't have to be looking at the screen, and neither do they. They don't have to be occupied and you be occupied. You can be occupying each other's company or time. Like, why is that not a thing anymore? I'm so confused. Where people will literally be like, we're hanging out, but you're doing two different things. That's not a thing! Next, obedience. Number 4, obedience. This is a crucial aspect of raising kids. Is your child obedient? One of the primary reasons children are disobedient is that they do not trust their parents. A disconnect has rendered the parents' words, commands, or even like the things that they expect from the parent and explanations, all of that, it's implausible and they just don't trust it. The child does not trust the parent. I had one situation, unfortunately, where a parent was late getting the kid so much. The kid at first would be sad and like cry, but after a while, the kid just didn't care because they didn't expect the parent to be on time. They felt no emotion toward the parent's lack of presence. They didn't care because they were like, I don't expect you to be on time. But that's where the mistrust comes in. Now they don't trust you enough to even believe that you'll be there when you say you will. Also, it's like in the example I gave about my parent. I eventually stopped expecting her to ever call me out of my room unless it was to do something trivial that she could do for herself. But she was too lazy to do. And it sounds like hypercritical of me or ungrateful of me, but when you do that, you create mistrust. The child's like, you don't want me unless it's to do something ridiculous. So I shouldn't trust that when you need me, it's actually necessary. When you say that you need me, I don't feel like it's necessary or that it's true because you made it clear in the past that that's not the case. Anyway, I didn't see the point of even responding after a while. I'm not gonna lie. It was like clear acts of rebellion. Like, I'm just gonna ignore her because I know she's gonna ask me to do something stupid. Throw out a diaper or something like that. Come wash my dish. Something ridiculous that honestly she could have done herself. But it's essential to be consistent and to build a healthy, stable relationship with your children so that they never doubt that what you're saying is true and good. Children need to be obedient so that they don't make unnecessary or irreversible mistakes. Obedience will protect the child from things they're not even wise enough to handle. It is as simple as sending a child to the store with money and instructing them to keep it in their pocket. If the child obeys, they arrive at the store without any problems. If they don't, they run the risk of losing the money and facing the consequences of their actions. Part of training our children to be obedient also involves not taking advantage of their obedience, like my mom did. This breeds mistrust. Don't abuse your parental power or authority. Parents, treat them and consider them the way Yahuwah treats and considers you. Have mercy on them and be patient. It's not easy. They really do know how to work a nerve and try to wear you down. But the calmer and more patient you are, the less stress it is, and it causes you, and in the future, they, to respond differently. They won't try it again, or if there is that type of situation, like, whatever type of situation, it's one less of a hassle. It'll be faster because they already know the outcome. It won't be the way they expect anymore, where there's maybe a big blowout, or where there's, I'm just going to get away with it because she'll get tired, or whatever the case. Eventually, you'll start to see, the change, but also it will change the way they handle conflict. I once seen one thing where the parent was, constantly yelling at the kid, but then the kid was always yelling at the parent. And the parent was like, you're not supposed to yell at your mother. And she's like, well, you're yelling. Well, you're yelling. So what did she expect the daughter to do? If this is what you do when you're handling conflict, or when you're having conflict with her, what is she going to do? Especially if she's not particularly like, she was like sort of not rebellious, but she wasn't going to take that. Because I think she understood even then that it wasn't okay. But she was like, I have no power against you, though. The only thing I can do to defend myself is what you're doing. But, you know, that drives a wedge. Anyway. Also, remember that if you haven't handled confrontation or discipline or lack of obedience properly in the past, changing things will provoke them. And they'll try to test you. Your response will also trigger them. Because it's something that they've not expected and they haven't seen before. It's disarming to them. You know, they're disarmed now. Watch their faces when you handle things differently. You'll see. One child, he was so used to his parents yelling and calling him names and asking what was wrong with him when he handled a simple situation wrong or made small mistakes, that when he dropped something in my presence, and my response was to ask him to pick it up, instead of yelling or insulting him, I could literally see something in his eyes change. He was so nervous and anxious at first, but then he just looked confused, like, oh, what? And then he just smiled and picked it up. Like, so simple. But he was so used to being yelled at and insulted when he did something wrong that, like, his eyes, he looked like a deer in the headlights. Like, he was so scared. And I was just like, but I knew why, because I'd seen the parent do it before. Like, you know, him do something so small wrong, or even nothing wrong. And, like, the response was, like, just unbelievable. But it's common, unfortunately. It's not acceptable, and it's not normal, but it is common. I think it's something that happens to most kids. But his response to not having that happen was, like, an instant easing, which should be normal. You know, a child shouldn't really expect to be hit with, like, such a barrage of insults and, like, yelling and name-calling and cursing. That's not normal. And then we wonder why they do the same thing. Because you did it to them. If you do that to them, they'll go to school or wherever and they'll do that to other people. The constant overreaction causes kids such anxiety that eventually they'll start lying just to avoid having to face their own parents' unintentional cruelty. Yahuah, the creator of all things, would never abuse our trust in him or his power. Therefore, we certainly should not do the same to our children, whom he gives to us as gifts. Remember, they're gifts. Please, let us give our children the best possible advantage in this world, the fear of Yahuah and submission to his will. This is the only way to ensure their safety, growth, and peace, and they will never want or even be able to maintain those things without the things mentioned above. They need those things so that they can operate and function and think without overreacting, without fear, without anxiety, without the constant need to rebel. And a lot of times if they're doing it, it's because they hate you. Or not hate you, but a lot of times you see, we grow up and we say, I'm never going to do what my parent did. But why? Because we hated that our parent did that. Think about it. And not everything that they did was wrong. Or not everything that they wanted to show us or teach us was wrong, but the way they did it was wrong. Please, think seriously before you act when it comes to them. Don't just say, well, my parent did it and I'm fine. I hear that all the time. Because most of our parents were victims of their own parents' mistakes and frustrations, especially in that generation. Remember, they were facing, like, you know, their parents, my grandparents are boomers, so they were, like, you know, under such heavy pressure and oppression that imagine the way they were raising their kids. If they did something to you and you hated it and never really learned from it, or just became more sneaky to avoid the punishment, maybe try and find a more effective way of handling your own children. Not to be hypercritical, or not to be critical at all, just saying, because I see this too often. And try not to be so harsh that it leads them to lying and sneaking, because then they're going to be in trouble for lying and sneaking all the time. And trust me, when they lie, they really go all out. They really think that they can just, like one of the kids did something right in front of my face, and I said, just don't do that anymore. Like, I said, don't do that anymore. It wasn't even, like, a huge thing. I just literally said, don't do it anymore. And they were like, what? And I was like, you just did XYZ. And they were like, no, I didn't. And I was like, you literally just did. Just, I'm not even angry. You're not in trouble. Just don't do it anymore because this is not the place to do that. And they literally just kept going like, I didn't do that. They literally were like in tears. And I'm like, okay. Like, you literally did in front of my face. Just don't do it. That's it. I'm not yelling. You're not in trouble. I'm just asking you to stop. But they were so used to like having to lie to defend their stance because they were so afraid of getting in trouble that even when they were like not in trouble, it was just like, I just have to lie. It's instinctive. Because I already lied and I didn't know that you saw me. You were looking right at me while I did it. I have to keep like trying to cover the lie because I lied the first time. Yeah. Try not to be so harsh that it leads them to lying and sneaking, like I said, and consider whether the consequence fits the crime and whether other factors such as lack of understanding, lack of an example, lack of necessity, or lack of strategy on how to handle a situation may have been a factor. Because a lot of times those are like the main things. I didn't know what to do. I needed this and I didn't know how to ask for it or how to get it. I didn't know, like I've never seen this done before, so I wasn't sure. So I just tried it this way, you know, and things go wrong sometimes. Or I didn't fully understand and things go wrong. But when you think about it before you do it or before you say something to them, you'll realize exactly why, especially if you know them. Know them very well before you discipline. Get to know them if you don't know them very well. Get to really see what they do and why they do it, because then you'll see it wasn't that they were being this or doing that on purpose. It's that they thought they could do this or they didn't know how to do this. They tried it, anyway, because they wanted to or they needed or whatever the case may be, and it just went wrong. And that's okay. I mean, especially if you don't give direction the first time. But doing the same miserable things to the children around us that were done to us is like trying to reform a person who commits a crime by just locking them up again, but never addressing what keeps leading them to commit the crimes. Many times you'll find that it's a lack of knowledge or ability. It's a lack. It's a lack of real support, a lack of opportunity. Nothing new's been taught, and the chance to actually use what's been taught hasn't been provided. I hope this hasn't been too preachy or taxing. I just want to address the psyche. It needs healing. And as easy as it is to just reach the kids, I realize they won't actually be able to practice these new ways as long as they live under the authority of adults who don't. They'll be knowing these things and having to wait till they're grown in order to actually do any of them. The change has to start with the grown-up. So please, choose. And until next time, Hallelujah.